I really feel grateful that I was invited, and I look up to many of you in this room as a great fan. So I am just thrilled to be here and see those faces that I've seen in the community for years that have made huge contributions. And I'm going to use just my words, and I will try to tell you a little bit about Onami Press, which is the reason why Bharat gave me the opportunity to tell you what's coming up. But I also want to tell you kind of why it happened, or what has occurred over my 25 years of being in tech, how I got to this point. And so I don't tell this story very often. In fact, I would imagine that probably none of you have heard what I did before I was doing YouTube. And I have enjoyed being a content creator, but I am now really thrilled to say that we have a new project that's going to come out. It's called Onami Press. It does not have a token. Doesn't need a token. It's taking a legacy business, using blockchain, because there are some really great reasons to use blockchain. And it also uses a lot of new tools that are out there in Web3. And that's kind of the timing that I want to remind everybody, is that you can have some really great ideas, but timing is so key in this world when you do launch a new product. Sometimes you're too early, sometimes you're too late, sometimes you just don't get the audience you deserve, and which I have really found to be so true as a content creator. I get that request almost daily for people to ask me to repost, retweet, can I come on your channel, can you talk about my project? So I really intimately know the problem that is out there. So I think if you're solving the problem and you get really lucky and your timing is right, you can do some amazing things. And I just want to tell you that in 1996, I was working in an art gallery. And at that time, people were coming into the gallery almost as often as I do get DMs today on Twitter, asking if I could help them. And they would be very often carrying either a picture or the actual artwork with them, asking me to sell their piece. I was just one little tiny gallery on the West Coast. We did a 60-40 split. We would keep 60.
Wow.
We would give them 40. And I would tell them over and over, I'm not a very good distribution platform for you. My audience is quite small. I might get 8 to 10 customers who are actually buying customers in a day. I'm not your best solution. But I saw at that time there was no other solution. So that was 1996. By 1997, I had it happen to me so often, I said there's got to be a solution here. I wasn't very savvy at all. In fact, I didn't like computers. I wasn't a gamer, so I just didn't know anything about them. But I taught myself how to HTML, and I created a website. You can still find it on the Wayback Machine. It still exists. It's called Art Lister. And I was one of the first classifieds globally for the secondary market art market. So, yeah.
Was that artlister.com?
Yes.
All one word?
Yes. It's embarrassing. It's so bad, but it didn't have to be slick. And people didn't even talk about UI in those days. It worked, and it solved a problem. And it provided the platform for people who had trackable secondary market art, limited edition prints, originals, and sculptures. And they could connect like a classifieds to anybody in the world. And I didn't get in between the sale. So I wasn't providing a broker kind of business. It was a straight, simple classifieds business. Pay me a listing fee, away you go. I don't care how many people contact you. I'm not getting in the middle of your sale. It was super successful. Why? Timing. I'm not that smart. I was really bad at making websites. But I created something that solved a problem, and I even launched before eBay. So I just had that luck of timing. My business was bought by a company down in Los Angeles. He was an art publisher. He knew the art market. He knew I was disrupting. Because before, the gallery owners networked among themselves, but they kept the customer or the sellers out. So the customers were never allowed to talk to other art buyers. The dealer was always the middleman in the way, controlling the sale. As a disruptor, I received a lot of death threats. I even had one guy from Philadelphia tell me he was going to send an envelope of anthrax to my house. Crazy stuff. But I think disruptors today still have that same problem in our space. So when I went down to LA, my business sold, and I went down on a 1-year contract, which turned into 2 years. We went public through a reverse merger. We experienced the dot-com boom, and we did what every dot-com company did. We went bankrupt because we ran out of cash. That was a really interesting experience. We were all very rich on paper, but I was a director. We had our shares tied up and locked. We couldn't sell. And we saw it go from $2 a share to bankruptcy in about 18 months. It was a good experience. I learned a lot. In that education, I learned about creating another solution for artists. Again, timing. The high-resolution digital images became possible. So I could take artwork from artists, capture it digitally in a high-resolution digital image, and then license that as an image bank globally to the poster market, which was about 28 billion at that time. So I learned how to do that. We went bankrupt, painful, but I'm thankful again for all that pain because it really makes you smarter. So I built one of the largest image banks in the United States. And my image bank was bought by another publisher in Venice, California, who had the distribution platform. It's a key word there, distribution, which was art.com. My image bank is still one of the largest image banks in art.com. I don't own it anymore, but so many artists are making a living off the licensing. So now I find myself in Tokyo. And I took a little bit of a break was dealing in vintage goods on eBay. I was a power seller for like 10 years. And then when COVID came, I was doing the Crypto Eddie channel on the side. It was kind of my hobby because I loved crypto. In 2014, I found Bitcoin. So I was a Bitcoin channel from the beginning. And that kind of metamorphosed into XRP. Crypto Eddie has had a lot of fun. Again, timing. There weren't a whole lot of YouTubers like myself 8 years ago. And what I found is a whole nother need, another problem that I can solve. And that's that problem of people coming to me on a daily basis through DMs, asking me to help them to amplify their message, their product, and their service. So that's how Onami was born. And my two co-founders, which are Santiago Velez and also Ty Wilcox, who's known as Moonchaser on YouTube. We've been working together. They send their best, by the way. We've been working together since early 2022, actually started in 2021. And we've been trying to launch a couple of businesses. Onami was one that's gone through some iterations. XDeFi is another, which is a derivatives futures contract platform on Flare. And why did we end up on Flare? Well, we tried to wait for XRPL. And Weetza hadn't let the cat out of the bag yet with Zahao. And so...
Timing.
Timing. So we got tired of waiting. You know, we were told it's going to happen. I think the last date that they told us where we finally lost all confidence, sorry, I'm on tape for that, was August of 2022. Persist was supposed to go live for us to have a smart contract capability if we want to build on the XRP ledger. And we finally had that big powwow. And we said, no, we can't wait anymore. We'd put it off for a couple years. And in retrospect now, I think it was the right decision, because even though we had the testnet and it's now an EVM chain, you know, using technology from Axelar, it's still not officially live. So I wouldn't say that, you know, we would be way, way behind if we kept waiting. And I always will have regret that we didn't start out on Zahao. But there's a good chance that we can scale horizontally with some components with Zahao. So Onami Press, what does it do? It's a press release platform. No token, I said, needed, because all we want to do is create infrastructure to be able to distribute, that keyword again, to be a distribution platform for people to be able to amplify their voice in a way that is fair and equitable, because I don't know if any of you have ever done a press release, over 3 million done annually with the big, big distributors. You will not get out for under 5,000. And it'll be very easy for you to spend 10,000. One press release, which goes out into the abyss. Your metrics and analytics are basically worthless. And the results and data shows that less than 3% people read past the headline. So what a waste of money. And what an absolute ripoff. Botakuri Nabe-san. I'm talking to him. It's the Japanese word for rip-off. Huge rip-off that industry is. So we knew that if we could bring it onto the blockchain and make it in a distributive way that is rewarding people with fiat, not points, not a closed ecosystem where you have to spend those points, but I mean fiat. In the currency that you prefer, you get monetized or incentivized to share on social media. So that's how we're bringing that distribution to life. And we can do it also with real world assets in the press release. So I'm going to use Wietse again. Let's say Wietse decides he wants to do a campaign. He's really cheap. He only wants to spend $100. We can do a campaign for him for $100 US. I don't know exactly how many people we can get eyes on his message, but using social media and with a few key shares on Instagram, LinkedIn, X, Facebook, maybe we can get him 500,000 views for $100. It's pretty good. Maybe
not to the European audience, by the way.
we can geo restrict. We can though. We can geo restrict, or we can encourage a certain share group in a region you want to promote to. Like, let's just say Barath wants to go to Southern Africa. We actually can make it so that those are concentrated for people to share in that region of the world. So it's, it's very effective that way. And the veracity of that press release being on blockchain also has a huge amount of value. Now let's say Wietse does his $100 campaign and he puts in his press release something he's released, new product or service, and you've decided to put some free ZA tokens in your release. Dangerous. And all of a sudden, those tokens are way outside your network. They're way outside people who you typically interact with on X, which is, I think, where you hang out most. But let's say there's a whole new audience on another.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so you've got those tokens now out in the wild. Now let's say somebody who gets the tokens and they live in, give me a good place in Africa.
Gambia.
Okay, they're in Gambia. ZA tokens. I don't think I'm going to use ZA tokens. So we have a marketplace where Wietse's ZA tokens can be traded, bought, swapped, or sold. We don't know, to be honest with you, what is going to be most popular on Onami Press. It might be the secondary market of these real-world assets. I don't know, to be honest. Or it might be just people who are wanting to amplify their message and use our infrastructure to do so. But that's Onami Press. Yeah.
I'm speaking as Horacio right now.
Okay.
I can see two thoughts in his mind.
You might ask.
Yeah. So Horacio wants to know. One is, if you have a marketplace, where you're doing trading, is there a different license which you would require?
No, because it's a real-world asset for us.
Okay, so that's one. The second thing is, how do you, can anybody upload anything, or is there a vetting process for what topics and subjects you can?
That's a really good question, because that actually comes back to a conversation we had about a year ago. And I think we did think we were going to go like the decentralized, let the world have this free voice. But then we realized there needs to be some sort of check system that the person who's releasing the press release has the authority to do so, to represent that company. And you don't want to put anything out there that is destructive, violent, offensive. So scam. So we have decided, at least in the beginning, we're going to have a queue. Unless you're an enterprise client and have been pre-approved, you will go into a queue and your release will be vetted and then won't be released until it meets the criteria to keep the level of releases on the up and up, because we don't want a bad reputation either.
So, sorry, I switched off the mic, but I'll speak loud. So do the clients pay you using blockchain, or do they?
So we've incorporated Wise for payments out and Stripe for payments in. And we most definitely will also incorporate stablecoins. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it'll be optional.
And so the secondary market, is this a DEX or a flare deck? No.
No, the builder who has built this, which I'm also part of that building team. In fact, all three of us, Santiago, myself, and Moonchaser, are also part of this team. They have built platforms for like Fidelity.
Okay,
so it's a enterprise trading platform with lots of experience doing that. Let me just make sure I got all my notes. Other than that, I think I've told you everything I wanted to tell you. I don't need to tell you that, unfortunately, the small to medium-sized enterprise clients that don't have this option today because they don't have big marketing budgets to do press releases, they end up in local radios, stations, and newspapers, trade publications. I'm not saying these are bad, it's just they have a limited reach. And I'm still talking about the ROI. In a trade publication, you still might spend a lot of money to get a small little exposure. But I think with the blockchain world, the KOLs, the key opinion leaders, that's, according to the people I talk to in this space, that's going down, down, down in terms of marketing technique. It's not trustworthy. The KOLs in the past have shilled anything and everything for money, so the trust is declined. So I don't think that using key opinion leaders is going to be the way of the future. You can do your own personal campaigns, but you find yourself limited to that audience that you've cultivated. And it's hard to break into a brand new audience. So that's what we hope to do, is give that brand new audience. I just put a little interesting thing here. In Japan, we have captured audiences in trains, in taxis with the digital advertising, and karaoke boxes. In between your songs, 65% of Japanese go to karaoke. I've been with my son once, I think, right? Yeah. Those in between songs, an ad pops up. So we have some unique captured audience ways to market products, which I think is kind of interesting. I don't see it everywhere else around the world, but I'm sure every place has their unique things. And The only thing I forgot to tell you is just real quick a personal story which also gave me a lot of motivation. I tried to do a press release for someone who had a payments app, and they were moving Bitcoin over the XRP ledger as an IOU. And it was the Daily Hodl. And because the Daily Hodl is a bias publication, even though we were willing to pay their $2,500 not to have them distribute, but only to have our press release show up on their press release page, which nobody visits, but they still wouldn't even put that on their page because it showed Bitcoin being used outside of the Lightning Network, and they didn't want to have the XRP ledger look good. And it was at that time, too, I realized that the media is so unfair. So it's not only too costly, but it's so biased. So I think that's all. And yes, question.
Going away. Well, you said ads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, and you also talked about embedding tokens.
Yeah.
Do you also embed multimedia content?
Yeah, so the whole reason that I think the Web3 is the way to go is because we have AI. So you can do text to video now for promotions. You can use animated charts. You can use animated explainers. You can use the narrated entertainment kind of value to a release. It's just not words on a page anymore. I mean, words on a PDF are legacy last year. Everybody wants to be entertained a little bit. And as a content creator, I know from my Google Analytics what the retention rate is on average for videos. And I know exactly when they drop off. And I can tell you that after COVID, the average retention rate is about 5 to 6 minutes max. And if you do take those clips, if you've noticed, and I think a lot of people are following this same kind of business model when they put out a communication on X, keep it around 30 seconds, 15, 30 seconds, under a minute, and you can get some really good exposure, and people will engage. And it's just a noisy space, and nobody has the time or patience to go into long format, and nobody wants to read anymore.
Yeah.
I got two questions probably. One second. Thank you. So the first one is like, you know how Twitter now supports like long articles?
Yeah.
I personally never read them because it's sometimes people post like 1,000 words long essay, but like I just wanted to ask your opinion on that. And then the second one is like when you say Onami Press is built on blockchain, what does that exactly mean? Yeah.
We use the smart contracts on Flare.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
To settle.
The NFTs, because the NFTs, which are digital files that have the real world assets, we have to show proof of ownership. So like those tokens that I told you Wietze put into his press release, we have to show that those ZA tokens actually were transferred to an owner, and we use that smart contracts to do that.
And then what about the first question? What's your take on like Twitter
The long
article?
format?
Yeah, because it seems that some people
still
use
listen,
it. Yeah.
People still listen to Joe Rogan, and people still listen to, what's his name, Alex Friedman? Lex, yeah,
Oh.
who I used to listen to all the time during COVID. But I don't have time to do it anymore, even though I really like his guests and I like his questions. I just find myself, I mean, I do the All-In podcast, which is usually 60 to 90 minutes, and that's my max. I just can't do the long format anymore. It's a matter of time for me. Yeah, so I think there's a time and a place for long format, and it's not something you should avoid, but I would say don't rely on it to make that message you're trying to get out there reach as many people as something that's short and multimedia. Multimedia is for sure what you should be using.
What's Onami? What's the name?
Onami,
You never said that.
Onami means the great wave in Japanese. So O is an honorific letter that you put in front of something to give it great respect. So it's the great wave. Yeah.
Lovely.
Right. Just a quick one. In terms of Onami, how do you control or create or manage quality? Well, it's one thing about getting stuff out there, but the quality of the amplification that you provide. How do you deal with that?
So we're not live yet, and I can imagine we'll be live. By the way, we've got 2 projects that are in the works. One is very stealth, is coming out in 30 days. It has a little bit of a ahead of Onami's launch. You'll see soon what that is, and Onami will be live by August. And when we do go live, no doubt it's going to be like YouTube. Some of it's going to be really polished, fantastic, high quality, executed media. And some of it's going to be really junk. And so I don't want to be the one to say that it's junk, you can't go on. But we will put it into a queue to make sure that it's not offensive or violent or in those categories that are a little bit not so safe. But I know that the quality is going to really differ, just like we see on YouTube now.
The market will do its thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was thinking to myself, or are you just leaving it as organic? Because,
I'd
as the
like
social
to
media
have
work.
it organic, because I think the organic side is actually makes for appealing interest for people to see the diversity and see some homemade stuff.
I think that also, in my experience, this is part of the problem with mainstream media, that if you want to stay relevant to the variety of different audiences that are out there, if you're not organic, you're not going to keep up with the times in local or regional areas.
Yeah.
But then separately from that, in terms of ROI, do you have systems built in that actually relate the actual reach of those posts?
So
to
this is something
what's
I
been paid
didn't
out?
go into detail with, and but our analytics, you can imagine, are going to be very intense. And the dashboards that the enterprise clients will get to show so much data on their release is going to be beyond what they would expect. And it's just going to be amazing. And should we also be able to collate some of that data for the marketplace, whatever sector we're addressing? Because it's not going to be just blockchain companies. That market data will also be quite valuable. And we're not talking about personal detailed information, but like what part of the world people are resonating with what and how. And the marketplace too will present an incredible amount of data for us. Yeah, which I don't doubt will give us a revenue stream should we choose to take that data and do that.
And in terms of how people are sharing or amplifying the press releases, are they given kind of a specific way they have to share it, or can they? I know from influencer marketing that some brands can have a concern how their brand is being represented by influencers, so they have some sort of control over that. How do you control that?
It's like on Twitter now. If Wietse does a great little short 30-second clip of the new feature that he has released on the Zaman wallet, he can't control who shares that, or even the comments that they post above. So we don't want to control that. Yeah, and we just want that share to be incentivized, and then they even get incentivized if that ID from the link that's shared, if it comes back onto the platform, that person who shared gets incentivized again. So we hope that, I would love to say that in many parts of the world, Onami Press is making a good kind of gig side money for a lot of people who don't have maybe anything like it in their geographic area.
I don't know sorry if it was covered, but what about, you've seen in tokens and airdrops and all of that, there's a lot of farming which goes on, right?
Yeah.
So
we're gonna let the enterprise client airdrop to those who opt in for an airdrop.
Yeah, no, but I was actually saying that we've seen that there's a lot of farming going on, where there are click farms and there are a lot of things. So any thoughts on how you mitigate that, or?
Like if we have some people on a small island in the Philippines, all of a sudden, because that Ty has a first-hand experience with that when she helped launch a token for one of the companies. I don't even remember the name, to be honest. They're a PricewaterhouseCooper-backed token 3 or 4 years ago. And what they found is that they had a whole ring of people in the Philippines who were, just, kind of.
Yeah, so, because especially if you're monetizing people to do that, how do you think
we can actually limit that particular account because you have to register. So we know who you are. So if that account all of a sudden is like spamming tons of different people all over, we have a gate control that we can stop that.
Great.
Yeah.
You have to link up your social media accounts as a
you don't have to, but you get paid more money if you do. Yeah, you don't have to.
Because this is a very familiar problem for the ecosystem as well. Back in the days with Coil, where you had 100,000 people just running remote desktop streaming website visits all day.
Right.
It took home a lot.
Yeah. Well, we'll be able to have some control over that. So. And we'll recognize it. And I'm sure that we're going to have everybody try every sort of play in the book to do it. Yeah, we're aware of that. And I'm sure there'll be stuff that is like, wow, we didn't think of that. I'm sure that'll happen too. Yeah.
Was that draining Coil's bank then?
Yeah, because it was basically an airdrop, right? So they would stream drops during a website visit to the content creator. So they would publish their own content and then visit their own content.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm not kidding you. Some of them, and there were hundreds of these accounts, took home 10,000 XRP a month.
Yeah. And that's the good thing too is that when you decide how big your campaign is, once that money has been spent out, there isn't there's not like a pool of endless incentive money that can keep pouring out. But we will be able to, I think, stop a lot of that before the pool that you've paid for to amplify your message. We can stop a lot of that. And if for some reason we missed it and it went for a couple of hours and we found that it wasn't very advantageous for you because all of those shares were going to some region of the world that you don't have any business with, we disable it and we can enable again from scratch. Yeah. Customer service. Anything else? Yeah?
I have questions.
Yeah.
During lunch and after.
Yeah?